2020. All right, I'm a little late to the New Year's Eve party or, celebratory statements. But whatevs, man, I was on hiatus. I was taking personal time to do real life things. But here we are, folks. Some of y'all probably, like me, only just now recuperated enough to be like, all right, what day is it? Like, who's going where? What time? Is it 2020 yet? Here we are, folks. Literally living in the future. I mean, for some of you, this may not be futuristic enough because y'all, small children. But no offense. That's just the nature of your reality. You're so young. There's a cutoff line, right? Where people are so young. And I'm not saying this to dismiss, devalue, put down, ostracize, or minimize. I'm just clarifying that I'm aware of this boundary and that it's meaningful and that we should try to be more aware of it. But there's a point at which where you're young enough that this all feels now. This all feels of contemporary nowness. And then there's another place, there's a middle ground where it's all confusing. And then there's another boundary where quite literally you're of an age where this is the fucking future, right? And I don't mean that in a crazy time travel way. I just mean that there are some of us old enough to remember what life was like without pagers, without cell phone towers, without internet. And we kind of miss those days. And we're now very much inexorably stuck in a mishmash of some of the things, futurists, quote unquote, and sci-fi daydream believers like myself imagined might populate the future. And we're in that sort of bullshit clusterfuck of only 1/3 of those things are really viably, awesomely true and helping society. And the rest is sort of just hanging about. We've got flying cars, but are they helping the world be a better place? I don't think they are, right? We have this meta super internet and this massive new, almost inconceivable level of supercomputing. The fact that I'm literally staring at a tiny little, very big screen, right? This is a massive device compared to the first pager that ever came out, or the very first digital assistant, if you remember those. Not quite a computer or an iPad, not quite a mobile phone or a pager, certainly not a smart device, but there they were, digitally assisting us in our day-to-day lives. And what's my point? It's 2020. There's a movie set in this year, that was ambitiously about imagining what that future that we didn't really nail, that we didn't really quite hit the mark on, could be like. And then, of course, other crazy questions. And there's just the general sense that 2020 is significant, important, the end, a new beginning, all the variations on things that people feel or fear or project about this number, 2020. And after much thinking about it, because I have been for quite some time, I have been fascinated by the fact that I could very well live into the 2020s, which, in my youth as a child were fanciful, futuristic notions of very, very, very far into the future. I'm not only going to live through them, I'm going to, manage to be constantly disappointed by what is going on. It's not living up to the fanfare from back in the day. But here's my point for today's episode, which I will try to keep as brief as humanly possible because I've got a bad habit of letting them ramble on and not have any real structure. But here it is. No matter what goes down, no matter what happens this year, my dear friends, as I write in the intro, 2020 will be remembered, heralded, lauded, applauded, vilified, crucified, talked about, characterized, etc., 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 as an important, significant, in some way or another that we may or may not think we understand yet, that's unavoidable. That alone, that fact alone, that 2020, this year, what is it, day 16 of this calendar cycle, for even the most mundane reasons, will go down in history as something of great significance. And who the fuck cares, right? Like, many people might go, okay, sure, whatever. So did 1872 and, other years hitherto, as of yet, undiscussed on the podcast. But my point is that we're living through this one now. And we all, each and every one of us, you, me, the homeless people on the corner, those in mid-level to high-level to even exclusive levels of control or power in the various systems of this system we call society, we all have the opportunity, the chance, the divine gift to choose whether we ride this year out passively and let the status quo continue as it is, or whether we step up, step through ourselves and our own mental constructs, our own addictions, our own entanglements, our own attachments, our own allegiances to ideological paradigms, and really address this word transcendence. Like, really do something about it. Not just aspire to it. Not just pat each other on the back about being aware of it. Not just congratulating ourselves for imagining that we have already achieved it. For if we are here, salivating at the mouth over food, needing to take a poop, and arguing about political ideology on the internet or in person, we have not achieved actual transcendence yet. And while many may argue that I am dead wrong, I'm very, very, very strongly convinced that in the natural order of things, when it comes to transcendence, not anything else necessarily, especially not anything else of human creation, I'm not talking about things that mankind has invented during this process of being a civilized society. I'm talking about something that seems to be beyond that, right? Something that seems to be inherent in the fabric of reality, separate from whatever ideation or ideology about that material we might have come up with. And that's this. I suggest to you, dear friends, that it is entirely possible that in this reality, in this cosmos, in this journey, on this path, in this event we call living life, when it comes to transcendence, when it comes to enlightenment, none of our ideas are accurate to the point of being perfect. And no one is so advanced in their progress that they need not work on themselves. And ultimately, and this is the important part, I humbly suggest to you that it is not an issue of personal gain. It is not a matter of things you will achieve separate from everyone else, but rather it is a collaborative, cumulative, and all-inclusive event. And that ultimately, it must be addressed as something that will consume all of us or involve none of us, if that makes sense. I'll come back to that in a future episode. I think I've referenced it before, but I don't want to belabor the point now because that sounds morbid and depressing. But quite frankly, I think that the silver lining here, or the important thing, the takeaway, the take home, the not to be dismissed conclusion here is that whether or not 2020 is destined to be something spectacular or not, every year is an opportunity, right, to revisit how we live our lives. And that's no easy task. I do not pretend to have a master's degree in self-improvement. I'm not here peddling you that bullshit product, right? Like, I don't get people who coach success but also have never been successful in anything other than maybe, I guess, coaching success. But if you got to charge me money to teach me how to make money, I don't know, right? It's just like the problem with our entire system at all, which is that the making of money is more highly praised, valued, and focused on than any benefit to humanity as a whole, and thus disparity, inequality, injustice. Those things arise because we made those choices. And if we as individuals, consciously or unconsciously, are approaching some rhythmically offered window of opportunity, right? Of course, in one thesis, the Buddhist, a Buddhist school of thought offers the salvation that moment is always now, no matter what's going on. But at the same time, we seem to perceive a momentum. And if we're being presented with an opportunity, why wouldn't we step up to it? Why wouldn't we step up into it? Why wouldn't we try to step up into and work through it? Why would we sit back and just let the status quo go on? And so I invite you, my dear friends, whether you consider yourself woke as fuck or not, whether you're patting yourself on the back for having already achieved some kind of awakening, or whether you're very, very dubious about whether or not this thing people call awakening is even plausible, I suggest to you the following. 2020, in its humblest form, is the beginning of a new decade, right? And if you set aside esoteric mysticism and spiritual blah, 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 every decade, quite genuinely, quite materialistically, quite manifestedly, creates its own vibe, right? The 70s is not the same as the 80s, not the same as the 90s, not the same as the aughts. We are now in the 20s. And will that reflect or recursively re-express the roaring 20s of recent generational memory and literary fame? I don't know. But if we rely on that and that alone, we're doomed to let the status quo roll on through and squish us with more ideological manipulation, endless conflict, and the profiteering that follows, right? But if we're, even at the most mundane level, if we're just going to say, hey, new decade, new cultural shift, new set of ideas, new innovations. Now add to that opportunity the fact that for some time now, 2020 has been discussed as some sort of potentially significant nexus at the spiritual level, right? Some sort of vortex of opportunity. Some people speak of portals, etc., etc. Now, I'm not here to tell you, what to believe in. I'm here to ask the questions. If any of that is even remotely accurate, if any of that level of discussion about what 2020 could, should, would, might be, is indicating something that is actually real in the universe, why would we choose to neglect it? The only thing that comes to mind in terms of, a reasonable excuse is that we're too busy distracted by the bread and circus, by the pomp and circumstance, the political infighting and endless war profiteering entertainment that we are presented by the mundane system of the thing we call our society, because quite possibly that's exactly what that system wants, to keep us distracted enough, even if we're aware, even if we're woke as fuck, The system still engages our attention and distracts us enough that we are not walking manifest enlightened ones. I haven't met an actual Buddha, right? Have you met an actual Yeshua Christos in your life? Or someone just feeling that they might be approaching that? Or someone pretending that they are that and taking people's money? I don't know. I don't mean to presume anything about anyone. I'm just saying, let's not pass up an opportunity that might very well be presenting itself if what some minds and scholars and spiritual philosophers have proposed is really true. Then why would we choose to not engage with that to the most of our capacity, the most of our abilities, the most of our cumulative, power to engage with that? Whatever that means. And I don't mean in any kind of predefined way, but rather in the sort of, let's see what reality itself wants to show us. All right, friends, as always, I thank you for tuning in. I promised I'd keep this short. This is under 20 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and clock it out. By the way, that opening track was another short, original, and hopefully interestingly danceable track by the little-known, yet-to-be-discovered DJ Zed, featuring Purple Mush and the Political Outrage with their debut album, The Early Years. Already played it, just wanted to let you know what it was. Namaste, friends. Thanks for tuning in.
And that is the latest madness from behind.
Totally pushed the wrong outro button. Meant to play the Almost Daily Zencast outro, and here's the Good Morning Trumptopia outro.
For listening to GMT, a special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Stay woke, Trumptopia. Stay woke.